How terrifying is artificial intelligence in the future? It can kill humans in an instant. If you hear someone say something bad, they'll be turned into ashes. It can even transform into a kitchen and create the perfect place for the customer. But the humans are getting stronger as well. This man can tear a ninja apart, a 300-pound sumo wrestler, and he's not afraid to get his hands dirty with a killer girl. His specialty is stopping cannonballs with one hand. A tank is easily destroyed, whether it's a nightmare ghost doll or a black mamba. This man can take on the world, but his boss wanted to erase his memory. In the nick of time, the man breaks free. The helmet was placed on his boss's head so that no one in the world would know he existed. The man's name is Wayne. He lived in Springfield under a new identity. One day, a robber came into the saloon. Wayne kicked him over. He was fast and agile. He took the robber down in a matter of seconds. Homer invited Wayne to his home, but Wayne was traumatized. That's why he got into so much trouble at work, and Homer took him in. Wayne taught the kid self-defense, and Lisa was able to get the drop on Bart. Bart learned a few tricks.
Give us your lunch money!
But it didn't last. Wayne's enemies came after him. They kidnapped Homer. Wayne infiltrated the kidnapper's lair and found Homer buried under the ice, breathing through a straw. Wayne grabbed a weapon and took on the gang on his own. As soon as Homer came out of the ice, he was taken hostage by the gangster because he had been in the ice for too long. He immediately hugged the big man to keep warm.
Stop it!
Just let me put my hands under your armpits.
Wayne didn't want to get the Simpsons involved, but Maggie wanted him to stay. Wayne put all his skills in his toolbox, and he passed it on to Maggie. Today is a day of celebration for the carnivores, because Yavya, the star of the beast, is dead. He fell from a height, and the news spread quickly through the black market. Everyone was celebrating. Only Legosure, who had just learned the news, was in a state of panic. It turns out that just recently, Yavya had recently seized a gazelle, a counselor disguised as an elephant. He thought Mello was a herbivore, and he let his guard down by being a member of the same race. He brutally murdered him and pushed him to a secret room behind the fireplace, and then dismantled. The most valuable tusks were removed. I didn't want to see him in person. I realized that he was a hybrid animal, and he fell into a trap that he had set. He took the tranquilizer gun he was carrying and stabbed himself in the body.
せっかくお知り合いになれたのにパーティーに呼べなくて残念だ。待って！
After this battle, Yavya was badly wounded. To celebrate, pharmacies in the black market are also offering discounts. The tortoise in front of him is tied up in chains. He has to sell his shell to pay off his huge debt. The rats are telling him about an event to celebrate the death of Yavya. That is, without anesthesia, the old-fashioned way of cutting the shells. This way, the shells can be sold for a higher price. But then Yavya came to him. He asked the drugstore owner, where does the ivory that's in the market and used for medicine, where did they come from?
それは企業秘密。
僕はせっかちなんだ。
やめて。
さっさと答えた方がいい。ぺちゃんこになっても構わないなら別だ。
ガゼルだよ、ガゼル。頭のおかしな草食獣が急に持って現れたんです。
And when he got a definite answer, he set out to visit Legacy to discuss how to deal with Marrow.
とりあえずお土産だ。メロン。レゴシ君。メロンは野菜かな。果物かな。え？果物じゃないですか？果物は木になるもんだ。ああ、そうか。じゃあ野菜？野菜をデザートに食べる？それはないな。どっちだ？じゃあ果実的野菜。
And then Yavya said, the animal we're chasing is Mello. He's also known as Melon. His identity is the same as this one. It's not a herbivore. He's not a carnivore either. Mello simply enjoys the thrill of killing. And Yafwa had the misfortune to break his leg during that meeting with Mello. He broke his leg for a horse, so he wanted Legosure, a half-breed, to help capture Merlot. And Yafwa promised him to help him deal with his carnivorous past. Legosure and Haru would have a warm home. Hallucinogenic.
Let me some time.
Insanity.
Do you like my soothing voice?
Greed. Self-harm. Until the final death. This is one of the most educational episodes of Family Guy.
Brian. 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 Brian.
Brian!
It all started that stormy evening. A terrible hurricane named Alpha made landfall in the town of Clams, which caused all the internet and TV signals in the town were cut off. Everyone was bored on the couch, but Brian's dog came up to the second floor and found a bag of mushrooms in the corner. Coincidentally, Stewie caught him in the act. He asked what it was. As we all know, Brian was a drug addict. He said, "It's a mushroom that has a forced exchange effect. If you eat a little bit of it, you'll fall into a hallucination. In large quantities, it can be fatal." Anyway, he's got nothing to do right now. He's trying to get some excitement out of this. Stewie was used to Brian's death-defying behavior. It was his indulgence that nearly caused a disaster. Brian ate a couple of mushrooms and went into the living room. Everyone was bored out of their minds. As soon as he sat down, he heard a strange noise. Everything started to go wrong. Brian shook his head to clear his head, but his body was out of control. No one noticed what was wrong with Brian. The figure was like a puppet, slowly disappeared from everyone's view. Stewie was the first to recognize the problem. He found Brian in the second-floor bathroom.
I'm gonna cut my ear off to prevent World War II. Ah! Ah! Oh God! Oh God!
Brian's condition scared the hell out of Stewie. After all, he was just a 1-year-old baby. He had no idea how to handle it. All he could do was sew Brian's ear back on and put him in his own bed to rest. But by now, Brian was in a complete state of hallucination. Stewie's mouth became something he'd never seen before. The gentle words of comfort turned into demonic whispers. Brian subconsciously tried to escape, but fell into an even more terrifying abyss. When Brian woke up, he was in a horrible world. It was filled with ghastly creatures, and these creatures were all real family members with loud noises. Megan was transformed into a giant cockroach that could spit, and Pete was made into food by a bunch of demons. Louise was transformed into a seductive snake, and finally, Stewie became the master of this hell. Brian felt like he was falling. Here, he witnessed the ugliness of the human heart and the horror of hell.
Brian. 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 Brian.
When Brian woke up, it was half an hour later. The drugs had taken a toll on him. What little energy he had left was gone. In that half hour, he almost lost his life.
Oh, I'm so thirsty.
Let's get you downstairs so you can drink some water.
Drugs are the cancer of the world. It's not as good as the addicts make it out to be. That's how a lot of people who get out describe it. It's a nightmare every time you go through it. You can feel your life draining away, but your body craves it all the time. Every time you try to quit, it's like a million pains in the ass. Countless families have been torn apart by these things. So whether it's for your future or for the happiness of your loved ones, please stay away from drugs. Don't let one wrong curiosity and ruin your life. In a dimly lit room, the little boy and his beloved dog hugged each other tightly. The hurried mother gathered her things. She grabbed the boy and rushed out the door. She doesn't even notice the boy's missing shoes. Corky looks at the shoes in front of him with a puzzled expression, until he heard the sound of a car starting outside. Corky realized he had been abandoned. He rushed out of the house with his master's shoe in his mouth. Helicopters hover over the city. Tension begins to build. The ground is covered with papers with unknown icons. In an alley, Corky sees a figure. He rushes over to it with excitement. The figure turns around at the sound of a voice. The person in front of him is a zombie. Corky has a soulful body, and his entertaining attitude succeeded in confusing the zombie. The city seems to be paralyzed in an instant. Explosions, sirens, gunshots, all of it terrified Corky. Corky wandered for who knows how long. He finally found his owner's car in an old parking lot, and found his master's car. Corky ran happily over to the car, but in the badly damaged car, only his mother, who had long since turned into a zombie, was left, and the little master was nowhere to be found. At this moment, Corky was completely desperate, but the footprints on the side gave him new hope. Corky followed the footprints, but he accidentally stepped on the car keys. The ear-piercing siren sounded. Instantly, numerous zombies surrounded him from all directions. The lady of the house, who had turned into a zombie, also jumped out and bit the shoe. Corky desperately grabbed the shoe back. Looking at the zombies in front of him, he jumped onto the roof of the car. At this moment, he turned into a tape recorder. He jumped on the zombie's head and kept on jumping, and then he went into the pipe. Along the roof, he found a window and got in. In the supermarket, a light caught Corky's eye. Corky went over to him, and there was the boy he'd been thinking about so much. He put his shoes on the floor and screamed at the sight of his beloved dog. The dog and the man hugged each other tightly. Outside the door, the walkers found them, trying to break in, and he had the courage to put on his shoes. He armed himself and Corky opened the other door and ran out.